You're such an asshole.
How you kids doing? All right. Hi, Aaron. I hope you are well. I want to thank you for your previous advice. This has really helped. I want to get your thoughts on more macroeconomic issues. Those would be international or global. There's micro, there's macro, there's international. Specifically, the Chinese yuan that has come into the news lately. Lately, where have you been for 20 years? I read that Saudi Arabia was negotiating a possible deal to sell oil in Chinese yuan, and Israel adding yuan to its list of reserve currencies while reducing dollars. I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think this is a sign that China may supplant the dollar, or is in the process to? Or will we have a world where not just dollars but yuan are held in reserve currency status? I don't want to. You know what? Let me answer them kind of as we're going, so I don't forget my thought. Um, the world reserve currency market, let's just put it that way, is not as simple as dollar versus whatever the newcomer is. All right. For quite some time, there has been another effective world reserve currency, and that has been the euro. All right. Before that, it was the British pound. The Deutschmark was pretty good. Switzerland didn't like it, but Swiss francs were always considered reliable and a safe haven like that. So it wasn't like, well, it's the dollar and nothing else. As different currencies came onto the international currency market, well, I guess currencies would have to be international by default now, wouldn't it? People in different governments would say, all right, we got an overexposure to dollars. Didn't even make them think like, well, we don't like dollars, or there's something structurally wrong with the dollars, or overvalued, want to unload our dollar. It wasn't that. It was just simple common sense diversification among central banks and large banks and other investors. Was like, well, I don't want to hold dollars all the time. Oh, I'm going to have some euros. I guess an even better example predating the euro would have been the Japanese yen, where Japan was just booming, rapidly became the second largest economy in the world. And so I'm going to get a little bit of yen. So I am not terribly worried. I mean, the US dollar, yes, it's the world's reserve currency. Yes, it's a flight to safety. Yes, the petrodollar purchases are denominated in it. But this is not 1973 anymore. Where it's the dollar versus a marginal Japan versus a non-existent China versus the Great British Pound, and the Deutschmark were much bigger back then. Where the US was kind of the standalone guy on the block. Different countries and economies and economic regions like the euro have come along, and whether you've realized it or not, have provided the dollar some competition, and not even necessarily in a bad way too, because do you really want to have just one currency? It's kind of good to have a diversified currency. You have a little bit of euro, yen, and more recently yuan. So let's go through your questions, but want to get your thoughts on it. The thoughts on Israel among other countries accepting yuan, other central banks putting yuan into. I think that's just normal. That's common sense. Yes, it does weaken the dollar in the fact that there is less demand for dollars and more demands for other stocks. I'm sorry, other currencies. So in that sense, yes, it does kind of weaken the dollar, but it's kind of like saying, well, I'm going to invest in IBM versus Apple. Well, somebody bought 2 million shares of IBM. Does that strengthen IBM relative to Apple? Yes. Does that mean Apple is weak? No. It just means they want to get some IBM in there. May not be anything structurally wrong with IBM or the US dollar. Oh, there's plenty structurally wrong with the dollar, don't get me wrong. So I think this is just natural consequence of an increasing globalized economy with central banks diversifying out of a debt-ridden. And here, we'll get to this later, but just so you know, that's going from one debt-ridden currency to another debt-ridden currency. It's not like the fundamentals of the yuan are that much better. Do you think this is a sign that China may supplant the dollar, is in the process to? Everyone is in the process to. You'd like to have your currency be the world's reserve currency. That's just the nature. So yes, it's in the process. We're all in the process, unless you're Venezuela or Zimbabwe. But I don't think it's going to supplant. Or will we have a world where not just dollars, but yuan are held in reserve currency status? Yes. Yes. Along with gold. I don't know if other central banks go with other commodities like silver or precious metal, other precious metals or oil. I talked about this to another friend of mine who worked in finance in China. He said he thought the first scenario was unlikely due to issues of corruption and China's aging population will turn them into Japan. Do you agree with him? Yes. And that was the point I was going to get, specifically corruption. China, no doubt, is the single largest manufacturer of stuff, which from a pure economic standpoint is what would give a currency value. So in that sense, its fundamentals are stronger than pretty much any other country in the world because of the size of its economy and the sheer amount of stuff it produces. But then you throw in services and technology, which also has value. Well, United States and Europe kind of come out ahead of that. China just rips people off because they're just too lazy to do their own job. Actually, is the CCP oppressing any kind of creativity by removing any ownership of any kind of new technology that's created? But, you guys like communism. Where'd those 50 million people go? They were here. Where's Dad? But then there are some other structural, cultural issues that you have in China, corruption being the main one. Currencies are all about trust. And it doesn't even have to be related to currency controls or capital controls, meaning the economy, the government purposely manipulates their currency and determines whether or not you get your money. Like Canada now has this huge, Canada has a crisis they don't realize because most of their government officials are morons. But when Trudeau decided that we're just going to take your money out of the bank account, that very much undermined the faith and trust in the currency of the economy. And he's a socialist, but that's the worst thing he did was that hurt the economy more than his trust fund baby communist politics. And China's kind of got the same problem. Like, I don't know what you're going to do. Are my deposits in a Chinese bank safe? Is it? Is the Chinese government going to arbitrarily set the exchange rate really low so that they can have an exportive competitive edge? So all these yuans that I purchased, hoping they would appreciate based off the fundamentals of the Chinese economy, now are not worthless. I can't exchange unless I go into the black market. And I was going to say, non-financial things. Oh, you're shutting down Shanghai because of the disease again, huh? I don't trust you. And then you want to go fundamentals. Oh, they have a ton of debt. What was it? A year ago, there was that real estate company that collapsed. They have so much debt, and it's technically government debt, but it's through their state-owned enterprises, their companies, but they're owned through the government, so it's the same thing. It's kind of like the U.S. Postal Service, I guess. It doesn't matter if it's government debt or private sector debt or technically a fascist government ownership company of the company that has the debt. It's still debt. And also, as your friend pointed out, or your colleague, that because communism is just so smart, they bumped off women. They unfortunately killed little girls. And now there's a shortage of women. And now the women have become very arrogant, where it's like a house or go away. And the birth rates are dropping rapidly. And I haven't studied as much as even, say, Japan or South Korea. Everyone has their own variant flair of feminism. This was one caused by infanticide of young girls, 2-3 decades ago. And now, not only I don't know if you knew this, but if you bump off a lot of your girls, that's bumping off a lot of uteruses. So you bump off your ability to create new babies. The attitude also that has come with this is women have now largely become insufferable and unmarriageable. And you have kind of your own Sino version of a herbivore movement, or men doing their own thing, going ghost, whatever else you want to call it. And so that in turn will lower economic production in the future. And who's going to pay down those debts? I don't know. I know here we have immigrants coming in to work to pay the taxes, to pay down the debts, but I don't know what's going to. I'm no economist. So yeah, even the fundamentals of China are not that good. They're not that good. But this then shows you that currencies are a relative thing. relative to what? Other countries. And who's got good fundamentals? No one does. Not any of the major players, not any major currency that would debunk or dethrone the US dollar. The United States to this day is still the hottest looking fat chick at a party of fat chicks, or the smartest kid on the short bus, or the last horse in the glue factory, or whatever metaphor you want to use. Because people got to go to some other place. Well, we're relatively uncorrupt. If you include services and technology, we're still by far the largest economy. Our debts are not as bad as China, though we're trying our best. And every other country in the world or economic zone, in the case of Europe, has printed off just as much money to fight the flu. It's a race of stupid. It's like, who could be the dumbest country possible? And the US is thankfully losing this race by a hair. And to show you just how entrenched it is, I always got a kick out of this. So the housing crisis was largely caused by the United States. It was largely a US phenomenon. And then when the contagion spread to the globe and we had a global financial crisis, where did everyone send their money? They all fled to the dollar. They came to the country's currency that caused the problem. Because people are stupid. But where else were they going to go? China's corrupt. Brazil, it was called BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China. They're formidable. They're certainly growing economies, but they're also much more corrupt than the US. What else? The euro. Socialism. Or Europe. Hey, Aaron, do an impersonation of your average European. We're Europe. Things. We don't like war. Except now. I don't know. Like, what do you do Europe? Oh, hey, you got that food over there. You guys drive on that side of the road, and you all love your socialism. You're all so boring and common. You're unmentionable. Oh, still no man on the moon for you? Okay. Occasionally you get into a war. Hey, we hate those people over there because of reasons. Let's go invade them. The French said something mean to us. Let's do a 100-year war. Okay. Agincourt? What? So yeah, so that's kind of, I don't see like this crash long term or this immediate dethroning of the dollar. I've often said that if China would ever hire me out, I'd gladly tell them how to overthrow the United States as the world's dominant superpower. It'd be stop being corrupt, stop being the CCP, stop being a quasi-fascist organization. And I don't think they realize how much more money they'd make. It's like, look, you can have 100%, or maybe not. You can have 75% ownership and control of your economy. Okay, that produces X. Or you can have 40% control and ownership, an economy that produces 50 times X. And if you do the math, you're going to be a lot more wealthier. Well, I don't understand the psychology of dictatorships. I really don't understand. Like, why do you want to control these people? Well, we might lose power. Yeah, but you got to control these people. And that is a pain in the ass. It's just a pain. Like, if this is why I'm not only am I a libertarian because it's moral injustice, like, I don't want to tell you what to do. Yeah, as long as you're not hurting people, I don't care if you do drugs. That sounds very tedious. Like being concerned whether you're doing drugs seems very tedious to me that I now have to figure out whether you're, I don't know, going on birth control at a certain age. It's not my concern. Are you hurting anyone? You're not? Buzz off. Not my concern. I don't care about, how many rules and laws had to go into taking a wife and installing her into modern day cars where you're constantly nagged and dinged and alarmed and warned about all these things you never asked. I'm like, government's not getting in that. You want to put a nag in a car? The nag mobile. Go right ahead, GM. Fine. See what happens to your sales. It's safe. All right, let's go to the super chats. Oh, more interest than I thought in this topic here. Doopy-doopy-doopy-doo, doopy-doopy-doopy-doo, doopy-doopy-doopy-doo. There. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. What's XRP? I already banned 2 people. All right, there you go. We see you guys later. Toodles.